John Pierpont Morgan was born into a world of privilege on April 17, 1837 in Hartford, Connecticut. His father, Junius Spencer Morgan, was a successful banker, and his mother, Juliette Pierpont, came from a family of poets and preachers. From the very beginning, young Pierpont was surrounded by wealth and high expectations. He was destined for a life in finance, a path already paved by his influential father. His childhood was comfortable, filled with books, fine clothes, and the quiet hum of a household built on financial success. It seemed as though his future was already written, a straight line leading to a corner office in a London or New York bank. Yet, this seemingly perfect start was shadowed by a constant, unwelcome companion illness. This challenge, however, became the unlikely forge for his remarkable character. As a boy, Pierpont was often sick. He suffered from terrible headaches, seizures, and bouts of rheumatic fever that left him weak and confined to his bed for long periods. While other boys were outside playing, running, and shouting, he was forced into stillness. This isolation could have broken his spirit, but instead, it turned his mind inward. He developed an incredible capacity for patience and deep thought. Lying in his room, he would daydream not of childish fantasies but of grand ventures and future triumphs. He learned to endure pain with a quiet stoicism that would later define his presence in tense negotiations. His illnesses taught him to wait, to observe, and to plan his moves with meticulous care. In his letters home during these periods of sickness, we see a young man grappling with his physical limitations but already displaying a powerful ambition. He wrote to his father about his studies, his observations, and his quiet determination to overcome his frail health. He missed his family dearly but accepted his circumstances with a maturity beyond his years. These long, lonely hours were not wasted. They were his secret training ground. He cultivated an inner world of immense focus, a mental fortress where he could strategize and build empires in his imagination. This ability to turn adversity into a source of mental strength would become the very foundation of his legendary career, proving that the greatest power often grows from the deepest struggles. His father, Junius, played a crucial role in shaping his son's destiny, even from afar. He insisted on a rigorous education, ensuring that Pierpont's mind was always engaged, even when his body was weak. The elder Morgan sent a steady stream of books, puzzles, and financial reports to his son's bedside. He understood that a sharp intellect was the most valuable asset a man could possess. Pierpont absorbed it all, from complex mathematical problems to the histories of great empires. He learned that true power was not about physical strength, but about knowledge, discipline, and an unshakable will. The boy in the sickbed was quietly becoming the man who would one day hold the financial fate of a nation in his hands. When Pierpont's health improved enough to travel, his father sent him on a journey that would shape him profoundly. This was not a simple holiday. It was a carefully curated educational experience known as the Grand Tour. His first major stop was the Azores, a group of volcanic islands in the Atlantic. The warm climate was meant to heal his body, but the experience did more to expand his mind. Away from the strict confines of his New England home, he learned about different cultures, new languages, and the vastness of the world. He wrote detailed letters home, not just about his health but about the local economy, the shipping trade, and the people he met. He was developing a global perspective, seeing the world as an interconnected web of commerce and opportunity. From the Azores he moved to Switzerland, where he attended a French-speaking boarding school. Here, he perfected his French, a skill that would prove invaluable in international finance. But more importantly, he learned to navigate a new social environment, to stand on his own 2 feet away from his family's shadow. He was no longer just Junius Morgan's son, he was J.P. Morgan, a young American making his way in Europe. He then traveled to Germany to study at the prestigious University of Göttingen. He became fluent in German and excelled in mathematics and art history. This formal education gave him the technical skills he needed for banking, but it also cultivated his lifelong love for art and culture. His travels were a masterclass in observation and analysis. As he moved through Europe's great cities, Paris, London, Rome, he wasn't just a tourist, he was a student of systems. He studied how each country's banking system worked, how their industries were structured, and how their railways connected markets. He filled notebooks with data, sketches, and ideas. This hands-on education gave him a practical understanding of international finance that no textbook could ever provide. He learned to see patterns, to identify inefficiencies, and to envision better, more streamlined ways of doing business. The Grand Tour was building not just his resume, but his entire way of thinking. When he finally returned to America, he was a changed man. He was no longer the sickly boy from Hartford. He was a cosmopolitan gentleman, fluent in multiple languages, with a deep understanding of European culture and a sophisticated grasp of global finance. This unique combination of an American upbringing and a European education gave him a distinct advantage on Wall Street. He could connect with financiers in London and Paris as easily as he could with industrialists in Pittsburgh. His father had sent him away to heal his body, but in the process, Pierpont had forged his mind into a powerful instrument ready to build an empire. Upon his return to the United States in 1857, J.P. Morgan began his career not at the top, but as an apprentice. He took a position as an unpaid clerk at the New York banking firm of Duncan, Sherman and Company, the American agents for his father's London business. This was a deliberate choice by his father, who believed that Pierpont needed to learn the business from the ground up. He spent his days meticulously copying letters, running errands, and learning the intricate rhythms of Wall Street. He was a quiet, observant young man, absorbing every detail of how money moved, how deals were made, and most importantly, how trust was built. He was patient, knowing that this humble beginning was a necessary step towards his larger ambitions. His first significant move came during a trip to New Orleans. He was there on business for the firm when he stumbled upon a ship carrying a full cargo of coffee, but with no buyer. The ship's captain was anxious to sell. Seeing an opportunity, Morgan used the firm's credit, without their permission, to buy the entire shipment. He then quickly found local merchants and sold the coffee for a handsome profit. When his superiors in New York heard what he had done, they were initially furious at his audacity, but when they saw the profits he had generated, their anger turned to admiration. This single bold act demonstrated his key traits: a keen eye for value, a willingness to take calculated risks, and supreme confidence in his own judgment. However, his early career was not without controversy. During the American Civil War, he was involved in a complex transaction that would later be called the Hall Carbine Affair. He provided the financing for a deal involving the purchase of obsolete Army rifles, which were then refurbished and sold back to the government at a much higher price. Critics accused him of war profiteering, and the incident shadowed his reputation for years. Morgan, however, maintained that he had acted merely as a lender, providing the capital for the deal without being involved in the specifics. He faced the public scrutiny with his characteristic composure, learning a valuable lesson about the importance of reputation and the dangers of associating with questionable partners. This episode, along with others, taught him to be even more meticulous in his dealings. He understood that in the world of finance, a man's name was his most important currency. He resolved to build a firm so powerful and so reputable that its involvement in a deal would be a guarantee of its integrity. He was no longer content to be just an agent for his father's firm. He established his own private firm, J.P. Morgan and Company, in 1871. This was the beginning of his ascent. He was ready to stop working for others and start building his own legacy, a house of finance that would be synonymous with stability, power, and unwavering trust. In 1871, a pivotal moment in Morgan's career arrived when he partnered with the respected Philadelphia banker Anthony Drexel. They formed a new firm, Drexel Morgan and Company. This was more than just a new business, it was the embodiment of a new philosophy. Drexel brought an established reputation for conservative, honest banking, while Morgan brought his boundless energy, global connections, and a visionary approach to finance. Together, they created a firm designed not just to make money, but to bring order and stability to the chaotic world of American capitalism. Their offices at 23 Wall Street, at the very heart of American finance, quickly became a symbol of power and reliability in an era of wild speculation and frequent panics. Morgan's core belief, which became the guiding principle of his firm, was that business relationships should be built on character, not just collateral. He famously said that he would loan a man $1 million if he had character, but not a cent if he didn't. This wasn't just a moral stance, it was a brilliant business strategy. By focusing on the integrity of the people he worked with, he minimized risk and built a network of trustworthy partners. When Drexel Morgan and Company backed a company, it was a signal to the entire market that the company was sound, its management was competent, and its future was bright. This Morgan guarantee became the gold standard in American finance. The firm specialized in channeling European capital into American industries, particularly the rapidly expanding railroad network. In the late 19th century, railroads were the backbone of the American economy, but they were also notoriously unstable, plagued by cutthroat competition, overbuilding, and financial mismanagement. Morgan saw this chaos not as a problem, but as an opportunity. He believed that competition was wasteful and destructive. His goal was to consolidate competing companies, eliminate redundancies, and install competent management. He wanted to replace chaos with order, and his firm had the financial might and the international connections to make it happen. This approach was revolutionary. While other financiers were focused on short-term profits from speculation, Morgan was playing a long game. He was interested in building lasting, profitable enterprises. When he got involved with a company, he didn't just lend it money, he took a seat on its board of directors. He would personally oversee its restructuring, ensuring that it was run efficiently and responsibly. This hands-on approach, which came to be known as Morganization, transformed entire industries and laid the groundwork for the modern, integrated American economy. The House of Morgan was not just a bank, it was an engine of industrial consolidation and national development. The term Morganization became synonymous with J.P. Morgan's unique method for rescuing and restructuring failing companies, especially the nation's railroads. In the 1880s, the railroad industry was in a state of near constant warfare. Rival lines would build tracks parallel to each other, slash prices to unsustainable levels, and engage in hostile takeovers, all of which led to frequent bankruptcies and financial chaos. Morgan saw this as deeply irrational. He believed that order, cooperation, and centralized control were necessary for long-term profitability and stability. He decided to step in, not as a participant in the chaos but as its master. His goal was to bring the warring railroad barons to the negotiating table and force them to make peace. His methods were direct and forceful. He would summon the heads of competing railroads to his library at 219 Madison Avenue. In one legendary instance, he locked them in the room, refusing to let them leave until they had reached an agreement to stop their destructive competition. He would sit at his desk, often playing solitaire, exuding an aura of immense calm and unshakable authority. He would listen to their arguments, analyze their balance sheets, and then propose a solution. His plans always involved consolidating operations, refinancing debt, and placing his own trusted representatives on the company's board of directors to ensure the agreement was honored. This process was Morganization in action, imposing order from above. This same power to command and organize was called upon to save the entire United States financial system in 1895. The country was in the grip of a severe economic depression, and the U.S. Treasury was running out of gold. Foreign investors were losing faith in the American economy and pulling their gold out of the country, threatening to devalue the dollar and trigger a complete collapse. President Grover Cleveland's administration was powerless to stop the outflow. In this moment of national crisis, the government turned to one private citizen, J.P. Morgan. He was the only man with the resources and the international standing to reverse the tide. Morgan assembled a syndicate of American and European bankers to provide a massive loan of gold to the U.S. government. In a tense meeting at the White House, he calmly explained to the president that he had found a little-known Civil War-era statute that allowed the government to buy gold directly from private parties. The deal was struck. Morgan and his partners provided over $65 million in gold, worth billions today, stabilizing the treasury and restoring confidence in the U.S. dollar. Critics accused him of profiting from the nation's distress, but Morgan saw his actions as a patriotic duty. He had used his private power to perform a public service, cementing his reputation as the unofficial central banker of the United States. By the turn of the 20th century, J.P. Morgan was at the zenith of his power. He had reorganized the railroads and saved the nation's gold supply. Now, he turned his attention to the steel industry, a fragmented and fiercely competitive sector. The dominant figure was Andrew Carnegie, the brilliant industrialist who had built a vast steel empire. Morgan envisioned something even bigger, a single colossal corporation that would control every aspect of steel production, from the iron ore mines to the finished product. He believed that such a massive scale would create unparalleled efficiency, eliminate wasteful competition, and allow for long-term planning and investment in new technologies. It was the ultimate expression of his philosophy of consolidation. In a landmark deal in 1901, Morgan orchestrated the purchase of Carnegie Steel and several other major steel companies. The negotiations were legendary. Morgan met with Carnegie's representative, Charles Schwab, and after reviewing the numbers, agreed to Carnegie's staggering asking price. The result was the creation of United States Steel Corporation, the world's first billion-dollar company. It was a breathtaking display of financial power and organizational genius. U.S. Steel was so large that it controlled about 2/3 of all steel production in the country. To Morgan, this was not a monopoly to stifle innovation but a good trust designed to bring stability and rational planning to a vital industry. His role as the nation's financial savior was tested again during the Panic of 1907. A series of failed speculative ventures led to a run on the banks, and the entire financial system stood on the brink of collapse. There was no Federal Reserve to act as a lender of last resort. Once again, all eyes turned to J.P. Morgan, now 70 years old. He summoned the city's top bankers to his library, which became the command center for the rescue operation. For 2 weeks he worked tirelessly, using his immense personal prestige and financial resources to direct the flow of capital, decide which banks to save and which to let fail, and restore a fragile sense of confidence. He personally pledged huge sums of his own money and convinced other wealthy financiers to do the same, creating a pool of funds to prop up struggling institutions. In one dramatic moment, he locked the presidents of the major trust companies in his library overnight, forcing them to come up with a solution to save their weakest member. By sheer force of will, he held the system together. This crisis made it clear to the government that the country could not rely on a single private citizen to manage its financial emergencies. The Panic of 1907 directly led to the creation of the Federal Reserve System in 1913, a public institution designed to perform the very functions that Morgan had carried out as a private individual. Beyond the world of finance, J.P. Morgan was a man of immense cultural appetites and surprising intellectual curiosity. He was one of the greatest art collectors in history, using his vast fortune to acquire thousands of masterpieces, from ancient manuscripts and Renaissance paintings to Chinese porcelains. This was not just the hobby of a rich man, it was a passion driven by a genuine love for beauty and a deep respect for human history. He traveled across Europe with teams of experts, buying entire collections with the same decisive energy he applied to his business dealings. His goal was to bring the best of the world's art to America, to give his country a cultural heritage that could rival that of the old European capitals. This passion culminated in the creation of the Morgan Library and Museum in New York City. He built a magnificent marble palace next to his home on Madison Avenue to house his collection of rare books, manuscripts, and drawings. It was a sanctuary of knowledge and beauty, filled with priceless treasures like Gutenberg Bibles, original scores by Mozart, and drawings by Leonardo da Vinci. He spent countless hours there, surrounded by the objects he loved. The library was his private refuge, but he also saw it as a public trust. His will stipulated that it should be made into a public institution after his death, a permanent gift to the people of New York and the world. Morgan was also fascinated by science and technology. He was an early and enthusiastic adopter of the electric light, and his home was one of the first private residences in New York to be fully electrified by Thomas Edison. He saw the transformative power of new inventions and was a key financial backer for pioneers like Edison. He also provided crucial funding for the transatlantic wireless experiments of Guglielmo Marconi and the ambitious but ultimately unsuccessful research of Nikola Tesla. While he was a man of the 19th century, his mind was always looking toward the future, seeking to understand and invest in the technologies that would shape the 20th century. However, his connection to modern technology was also touched by tragedy. He was a primary investor in the White Star Line, the company that built the RMS Titanic. He had his own personal suite reserved on the ship, and was scheduled to be on its maiden voyage in 1912, but he canceled at the last minute due to illness. The sinking of the great ship, which was seen as a symbol of modern technological prowess, was a profound shock to him and the world. It was a humbling reminder that even with all the power, wealth, and technological advancement at his command, some forces were beyond any man's control. J.P. Morgan's personal life was marked by both deep love and profound loss. His first wife, Amelia Sturgis, whom he adored, died of tuberculosis just a few months after their wedding. This early tragedy left a permanent scar on his heart, and perhaps contributed to the formidable, reserved exterior he presented to the world. He later found lasting companionship with his second wife, Frances Fanny Tracy, with whom he had 4 children. He was a devoted, if often distant, father. He enjoyed spending time with his family on his yacht, the Corsair, or at his country estate, but his work was always his primary focus. He was the patriarch of a dynasty, expecting his children to uphold the family name with dignity and purpose. In early 1913, while traveling in Egypt, Morgan's health, which had been fragile his entire life, finally began to fail. He died in Rome on March 31, 1913, at the age of 75. The news of his death made headlines around the world. The New York Stock Exchange closed for 2 hours in his honor, a tribute previously reserved only for United States presidents. His passing marked the end of an era. The age of the individual financial titan, who could single-handedly steer the American economy, was over. The creation of the Federal Reserve later that year was a direct consequence of his life, institutionalizing the role he had played for decades. His legacy is complex and continues to be debated. To his critics, he was a ruthless monopolist who crushed competition and amassed too much power in the hands of one man. To his admirers, he was a financial statesman, a visionary who brought order to industrial chaos, stabilized the nation's economy in times of crisis, and used his wealth to enrich its cultural life. The financial institutions he created, like J.P. Morgan Chase and Morgan Stanley, remain pillars of the global economy today, a testament to the enduring structures he built. His actions demonstrated the immense potential and the inherent dangers of centralized financial power. The ultimate lesson from J.P. Morgan's life is one of turning adversity into strength and using power for a larger purpose. His early illnesses forged a mind of incredible patience and focus. He believed that with great wealth came great responsibility. For young readers today, his story is not just about banking or money, it is a call to action. It teaches us to build our character as carefully as we build our careers, to face challenges with thoughtful resolve, and to ask ourselves not only how we can succeed, but how our success can serve a greater good. Morgan's life reminds us to think big, act with integrity, and strive to leave a legacy of stability and purpose in a chaotic world.